So who does what when you're making decisions? The group. The whole idea is that the group is the one who's got the big picture in mind. It's composed of very different parts with different perspectives. You want your group to make good, strong, strategic decisions. That you've got your game plan in mind and this is where you're going. So that's what, in essence, as your board of trustees is, you got the vision, this is where we're going, and hold on for the ride. Now, actually within the meeting, a couple of people have got different things to do. The chair, of course, is running the meeting. The members, they're participating in the meeting. If you're a trustee, but you're not the chair, you can't be silent. Sorry, this is not the place for you to hide. The expectation is for you to participate in the decision and to help move things along. Secretary, and I'm just using that term for want of a better term, is the person who's going to look after the administrative aspects of this, making sure you've got your agenda, the backup material, so that somebody's making sure minutes are getting taken. Staff, who's there as your policy advisors? They're not there to make the decisions for you. That's your job. They're there to help you make great decisions with information, details about implementation, but they're not there to make the decisions that's entrusted to you. The chair, you're still a member, but yeah, you got more work. Lots more work. The idea is that you're worrying procedurally about what needs to be done. You're still going to be voting, and given, especially if you've got a smaller sized organization where you've got, say, 3 trustees, obviously you're going to need to probably debate a bit more, get involved in the discussion more than you might if you've got a board of 5 or more. The board, you make the decisions. The buck stops with you. But committees are advisory bodies. It doesn't matter whether it's a standing committee, you know, a committee that's gone on forever and ever and we don't know when it's ever going to end. It doesn't matter what type of committee. It's an advisory body, and the idea is for them to have a look at the type of information that you need to help make those good decisions, that they can look at it a little more in depth, take that type of time, but they are always referring it back to the Board of Trustees. The trustees are the only ones with that authority to make those high-level strategic decisions. And of course, staff, they're going to give you advice before the meeting. Then after the meeting, they're the ones who actually have to make your decisions come to life. So they're responsible for the implementation and the operational aspect. But at your meeting, you say, this is the game plan. Staff's job is to execute that game plan. Good governance is things such as accountability. And that's recognizing is that you have an obligation to report, explain, and be answerable for the decisions that you make. Transparency. People need to know how you're getting to the process, how you're making the decision. It's not just the process you're using, but that they actually can see the decision being made. Following the rules of law, what you're looking at is that you're following the legislation. So if the legislation says do X, you do X. Responsive, the idea with that is that, look, you're always going to be balancing needs. Some people's needs are going to be different than other people's needs. So you're trying to do the best job you can to respond to that. Doesn't mean you're going to make everybody happy. Equitable and inclusive, the idea is that you're balancing out the rights and figuring out who do we have the people, the resources in that to make things happen for the best, for the biggest number of group. And also that participatory, the idea that people can have access to your information. That's the idea behind freedom of information legislation, is that people know what's the information you had in order to make your decisions. This is what happens at the governance level. These are the questions you're worrying about, is which decisions most influence your objectives? You know, what's our game plan? How are these decisions going to advance that game plan? Clear assignment of roles and responsibilities, as in who should be involved in the decisions. What process are you using, and how are you going to make sure the outcomes are tracked once you've made those decisions? So that's what's happening up at your level, is answering off these types of questions. Policy and procedures. Yes, you pass bylaws, and bylaws are forms of fancy schmancy policies, which is basically overall saying, hey, this is our game plan. This is where we're going with it. Procedure is how do you actually implement what is in place. So the idea with your policies, it's going to tell you why you're doing what needs to be considered. What are the standards? You're going to set, this is what we want it to look at. In general, your policies are general in nature. They explain why they exist. They'll tell when the rule applies. They'll say to whom it applies. They'll describe the consequences that'll flow. Whereas your procedures are saying, look, this is the actions we're going to do. Here's the timing when it's going to happen. Here are the forms you need to use. For the most part, your staff is going to worry about procedures and pulling that all together. You're worrying about the policy, saying, generally, this is how we're going to do it. The procedures are, this is how we implement it.